Our tale begins in the age of the Renaissance, a period of unparalleled intellectual curiosity, of exploration, of deep reverence for the human intellect and its boundless potential. In a cluttered studio in the heart of Florence, the famed polymath Leonardo da Vinci pondered the chaotic and often brutal nature of warfare. The human capacity for destruction troubled him greatly. Seeking to conceive a means of battle that might mitigate the horrors of war, he sketched an innovation that would foreshadow the invention of the tank 5 centuries later, the armored car, or carro armato as he called it. This armored vehicle was a tortoise-like contraption, fortified by a shell of wooden plates, reinforced perhaps by a layer of metal. This shell would be able to repel the arrows and musket shots of the enemy, while its occupants operated a series of cranks and gears to drive it forward. Fitted with a variety of weaponry including cannons and rifles, Da Vinci's machine was an early conceptualization of an armored fighting vehicle, a precursor to the tank. However, this ingenious design remained a theoretical concept, an experiment consigned to the pages of his notebooks, for the technology of his time could not bring it to life. The seed of the idea had been planted, but centuries would pass before it took root. The horse remained the primary engine of warfare for many centuries, their speed and agility unmatched by any contemporary technological alternatives. Armored chariots, used since the times of the ancient Assyrians and later in the medieval age, were the closest thing to tanks, but they were restricted by the limitations of horse-drawn power and their role was typically limited to heavy cavalry or mobile artillery platforms. However, as the Industrial Revolution swept across Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries, the tides of change began to shift. Steam power, and later combustion engines, offered previously unheard-of possibilities for mobility and power. These new technologies would eventually propel warfare into a new era. In the early 19th century, the concept of armored warfare was rekindled. British engineer Richard Trevithick developed the first self-propelled steam engine, or locomotive, a momentous leap in engineering that would later inspire future armored vehicles. However, the machines were cumbersome and slow, too impractical for warfare, especially over the rough, unpredictable terrains of battlefields. In the latter half of the 19th century, the rise of artillery and the use of trenches in warfare highlighted the need for an armored vehicle that could cross difficult terrain while providing protection for its occupants. However, despite the rapid technological advancements of the industrial age, the technology for such a machine remained just out of reach. In 1855, during the Crimean War, British engineer and inventor Sir William Armstrong designed an armoured, steam-powered carriage mounted with 2 large cannons. Though it was an advancement, the carriage was still restricted by its reliance on roads due to its large, steam-powered wheels. Furthermore, its heavy weight and slow speed made it an easy target for enemy artillery. Throughout the late 19th century, various inventors and engineers experimented with armored, self-propelled vehicles, many of which incorporated elements of Da Vinci's original design, as well as new innovations spurred by the advent of the steam engine and later, the internal combustion engine. Yet, despite these efforts, a practical, battle-ready tank remained elusive. As the calendar pages turned over into the 20th century, humanity stood on the precipice of the most catastrophic war the world had yet seen. By 1910, the pace of technological innovation had begun to quicken. Automobiles had become more common, and planes had taken to the skies. Yet, the tank, that formidable instrument of warfare that would change the very face of battle, remained a concept waiting in the wings. In the shadows of the upcoming Great War, it would finally be realized, its potential for destruction and defense both, truly tested. In the early 20th century, a few years before the onset of World War I, the spectre of a new kind of warfare was taking shape. In the bustling metropolis of London, nestled within the heart of the city's industrial district, a cadre of engineers and military strategists gathered. The brainchild of this effort was to be the very first armored, self-propelled, and combat-ready vehicle, later to be known as Little Willie. The concept behind the creation of Little Willie was simple: to design a vehicle that could traverse difficult, war-torn terrain, protect its occupants, and unleash a devastating offensive force. The project was largely the brainchild of Britain's First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill, who had been a proponent of the Land Ship Committee, formed in 1915. William Foster and Co., a renowned engineering firm based in Lincoln, was commissioned to bring the concept of the tank to life. They were given the complex task of developing a vehicle that was not only armored and armed but also able to cross wide trenches, broken ground, and barbed wire that had become hallmarks of the Western Front. The initial design was significantly influenced by the tracked agricultural vehicles of the time. It employed a rhomboidal shape, with the tracks spread out over the entirety of the vehicle to allow it to cross wide trenches. The vehicle was powered by a Daimler 105 horsepower engine, which drove one rear wheel for steering. But reality is often more obstinate than theory. The first prototype, built in the summer of 1915 and soon to be known as Little Willie, had a fully tracked design but soon revealed significant shortcomings. The vehicle's weight was immense at around 14 tons, which, when coupled with its modest 105 horsepower engine, resulted in an underpowered vehicle with a top speed of merely 2 miles per hour on rough terrain. Moreover, its initial steering mechanism proved to be unreliable and difficult to control, and the length of the tracks resulted in poor maneuverability. Another flaw was that the track design wasn't capable of dealing with wide trenches typical of the Western Front, a key requirement for the new weapon. Despite these difficulties, Little Willie marked a significant step forward. It was the world's first fully armored, self-propelled vehicle designed for battle. The problems encountered during its testing would lead to improvements in the final design and were invaluable in understanding the challenges of armored warfare. During late 1915 and early 1916, modifications were made, resulting in the creation of a new prototype, Big Willie, or the Mother Tank, also known as the Mark I. But that is a tale for another time. For now, as 1913 drew to a close, the course of history was set. Little Willie, the progenitor of all modern tanks, had come into being, ready to redefine the very nature of warfare. The age of the tank had dawned. The world would never be the same again. As the design and testing phases of Little Willie progressed, it became increasingly clear that significant modifications were necessary for the vehicle to fulfill its intended role on the battlefield. This led to a new prototype, known as Big Willie or the Mother Tank, a machine that would serve as the blueprint for the first series of combat-ready tanks, the Mark I. Work on Big Willie began in the final months of 1915, with the first fully assembled prototype being unveiled in January of 1916. A notable departure from its predecessor was the revised track layout, which now extended upwards and over the hull of the vehicle, giving it a rhomboidal shape. This design change was born out of the need to improve the tank's ability to cross wide trenches, a necessity given the trench-laden battlefields of the Western Front. The new tank was larger than its predecessor, standing at a height of 8 feet, with a length of 32 feet, and a weight of 28 tons. Its power came from a Daimler 6-cylinder petrol engine delivering 105 horsepower, which gave it a top speed of around 3.7 miles per hour on flat terrain. The Mark I tank was heavily armored, with a hull composed of a series of steel plates ranging from 6 to 12 mm thick, providing considerable protection against rifle fire and shrapnel. But it was not the size, speed, or armor that made the Mark I revolutionary, rather it was the machine's lethal armaments. The tank was equipped with two side-mounted 6-pounder naval guns, along with multiple .303 Lewis machine guns, providing it with formidable firepower. Crew comfort and safety, however, were not given priority in the design. The Mark I was cramped and hot, filled with fumes from the engine and weapons. Noise was another issue. The engine, tracks, and gunfire created a cacophony that made communication within the tank nearly impossible without the aid of hand signals or written notes. Furthermore, the ride was incredibly rough, given the vehicle's weight and lack of a suspension system. Nonetheless, these discomforts were seen as secondary to the vehicle's tactical advantages. In the summer of 1916, the Mark I saw its first combat deployment during the Battle of Flers-Courcelette, a segment of the larger Battle of the Somme. Although the tanks made a significant psychological impact on both friend and foe, mechanical issues plagued their debut. Of the 49 tanks available for the assault, only 32 made it to the starting line, and of those, only 9 succeeded in crossing no man's land to reach enemy trenches. Despite the Mark I's challenging debut, the potential of armored warfare had been realized. In the face of the static and brutal nature of trench warfare, the tank offered a new tactical option, embodying mobility, protection, and firepower in one package. Its existence and deployment marked a significant shift in military tactics and heralded a new era in the history of warfare. Through further iterations and improvements over the following years, tanks would prove to be a decisive factor on the battlefields of World War I and beyond. The Mark I tank marked a profound shift in the nature of warfare, effectively disrupting the stalemate of trench warfare. Even with its early flaws and obstacles, the Mark I represented a groundbreaking achievement. It was a machine that encapsulated the concept of bringing firepower, armor, and mobility together on the battlefield. The design of the Mark I tank was tailored to the specifics of the Western Front. Its rhomboidal shape, created by the looping tracks, was crucial for navigating the treacherous terrain. This shape allowed it to climb parapets up to 5 feet high and cross trenches as wide as 11 feet. Its hull was protected by armor that could withstand small arms fire and shrapnel, providing unprecedented protection for the crew within. Internally, the Mark I was divided into two main compartments. The rear compartment housed the Daimler 6-cylinder engine and the gearbox. The forward compartment was for the crew and weapons. The driving position was at the front of the crew compartment, with the commander sitting behind the driver and the gunners and loaders stationed on either side of the hull. The crew, consisting of 8 men, operated in arduous conditions. The interior of the tank was hot, cramped, and filled with exhaust and gun fumes. The noise was deafening, making communication exceedingly difficult. There was no suspension system, making the ride rough. Despite the less than optimal conditions, the Mark I offered a significant advantage. It provided a platform from which firepower could be delivered while offering protection to its crew, a revolutionary concept at the time. 2 variants of the Mark I were produced, male and female. The male variant carried 2 6-pounder naval guns mounted in sponsons along the sides of the tank, plus machine guns. The female version, recognizing the primary threat of infantry, was equipped with multiple .303 Lewis machine guns in place of the 6-pounder cannons. This differentiation in armament was unique to the early British tanks. Despite the mechanical failures during its initial deployment at the Battle of Flers-Courcelette, the Mark I tank demonstrated its potential, not just in military terms, but also in terms of the psychological impact it had on both enemy and Allied troops. For the enemy, the sight of such machines, seemingly impervious to rifle fire and capable of crossing previously impregnable defenses, was a chilling sight. For the Allies, the tanks became a symbol of hope, a means to break the devastating stalemate on the Western Front. The Mark I tanks were used until the end of 1917 when more advanced models replaced them. However, the legacy of the Mark I tank lived on. It set the precedent for future tank designs and strategies, shaping armored warfare for the next century. Despite the age of these machines, their influence can still be seen in the modern battle tanks of the 21st century. The Mark I tank's design and impact indeed cannot be overstated, as it laid the foundation for modern armored warfare. As we delve deeper into the intricacies of this groundbreaking machine, we can appreciate the ingenuity and resourcefulness of its creators, and how its use shaped the strategies of warfare for the following century. Externally, the Mark I was an imposing sight. It was about 32 feet long and 8 feet high, with a width of around 14 feet, dimensions that were necessary to navigate the shell-blasted terrain of the Western Front and cross wide trenches. The armor ranged from 6 mm to 12 mm in thickness, sufficient to stop bullets and deflect shrapnel. However, it was not robust enough to withstand direct hits from artillery, a vulnerability that was noted for future tank designs. The tank was powered by a Daimler 6-cylinder petrol engine producing 105 horsepower. Despite its size, the Mark I was not fast by any measure, managing only about 3.7 miles per hour on flat terrain and a slower speed on the difficult terrain of the battlefield. Its engine was cooled by water stored in a tank above the engine and fed by gravity, a system that was reliable but made the interior of the tank hot and uncomfortable. Internally, the Mark I was a harsh environment for its 8-man crew. There was no separation between the engine compartment and the crew space, which meant that noise, heat, and engine fumes filled the interior. Combined with the fumes from discharged weapons and the lack of a suspension system, the conditions were so severe that crew members often became disoriented or even unconscious. In later models, these issues were addressed with better compartmentalization and ventilation. Communication within the tank and with external command was a major challenge. The deafening noise made verbal communication impossible, so orders had to be passed using hand signals or written notes. Communicating with outside command was even more difficult, and the tanks often operated independently once they left their starting positions. The Mark I was also challenging to maneuver. It was steered by varying the speed of the two tracks, a job that required two crewmen working in coordination. Stopping one track while accelerating the other could rotate the tank on the spot, but this was difficult to accomplish under combat conditions. The control system was rudimentary and physically demanding, another area of improvement for future models. Despite its shortcomings, the Mark I marked the dawn of a new era in warfare. With each subsequent model, improvements were made based on the experiences learned from its deployment. It helped shape the strategies and tactics of modern warfare, paving the way for the armored juggernauts we see today. The Mark I tank remains a testament to human ingenuity and a symbol of the seismic shift in military technology during the 20th century. The Mark I, while a groundbreaking creation, was not without its shortcomings. It was the first of its kind, a prototype machine born out of urgent necessity in the midst of a devastating war. Many of these limitations were inevitable, given the technical constraints and limited understanding of armored warfare at the time. One of the main issues with the Mark I was its reliability. The early tanks were prone to mechanical breakdowns, often caused by the immense strain placed on the engine and transmission. The demanding terrain of the Western Front was particularly hard on the tank's components, leading to frequent failures. The Daimler six-cylinder engine, while robust, was insufficient to effectively drive the 28-ton vehicle, resulting in low speed and difficult maneuvering. The crew conditions inside the Mark I were horrendous. The noise from the engine and the firing of the weapons was deafening, while the heat and exhaust fumes often made crewmen sick. In addition, the lack of an internal suspension system made the ride extremely rough, adding to the discomfort of the crew. The steering mechanism of the Mark I was also problematic. It required a high degree of coordination between the driver and the gearsman, which was made more difficult by the loud noise and poor internal communication. This often led to delays in response time and maneuverability issues on the battlefield. The armor, though revolutionary, was not without its weaknesses. While it provided ample protection against small arms fire and shrapnel, it was unable to withstand direct hits from artillery shells. This vulnerability was a significant issue, given the prevalence of artillery in World War I. In response to the shortcomings of the Mark I, British engineers started working on an improved design, which eventually became the Mark II. The Mark II retained the rhomboidal shape of the Mark I, but there were numerous improvements designed to rectify the flaws of the first model. The Mark II had better armor, reinforced to withstand artillery fire, while the track design was also improved to reduce the likelihood of them coming off on rough terrain. The steering was simplified, reducing the number of crew members required to maneuver the tank and making it more responsive. The internal layout was also modified in the Mark II, separating the engine from the crew compartment to reduce noise and fumes. Despite the improvements, the Mark II was seen primarily as a training tank and was not produced in large numbers. However, it served as a valuable stepping stone to the Mark IV, which would become the main tank of the British Army for the remainder of the war. This iterative process, of learning from the limitations and failures of each design, characterizes the evolution of tank warfare. The bravery of those early tank crews, who battled not just the enemy but also the harsh conditions within their own machines, was instrumental in shaping the future of armored warfare. Following the Mark I, the Mark II brought about a host of enhancements, although it was primarily used for training and not produced in large numbers. The Mark II served as an important stepping stone in the evolution of the tank, allowing for further refining of the concept before mass production of later models. When you consider the Mark II, it is essential to remember that it was not so much a new design as it was an improvement upon the Mark I. The fundamental rhomboidal shape and the overall layout remained the same. However, several modifications were made to address the Mark I's glaring issues. One of the significant changes was in the armor. The thickness was increased, and in certain areas, hardened steel was used instead of the softer material used in the Mark I. This change was made in response to the discovery that the Mark I's armor, while proof against small arms fire, could be penetrated by high-velocity rounds and did not withstand direct artillery hits well. The thicker, hardened armor provided better protection, although at the cost of increasing the tank's weight. Another major change in the Mark II was in the track design. The original tracks of the Mark I had proven prone to derailment, a serious issue on the battlefield. The new design featured a track-adjusting mechanism that maintained tension, thereby reducing the chances of the track coming off, especially in rough terrain. Inside the tank, there were attempts to improve conditions for the crew. The engine was further isolated from the crew compartment, reducing the heat and fumes that the crew was exposed to. However, the interior conditions remained harsh, as the tank still lacked ventilation, and the noise levels were still near deafening. The steering mechanism was also improved. While the Mark I required 2 crew members to steer the tank, a driver to handle the primary controls and a gearsman to manage the secondary gear, the Mark II simplified this process. The new design allowed a single crew member to handle steering, thereby freeing up another man for other duties and improving the tank's overall responsiveness. It's important to note that despite these improvements, the Mark II was primarily used for training purposes. It was a transitionary model, bridging the gap between the pioneering but flawed Mark I and the more combat-ready Mark IV. As such, the Mark II was produced in limited numbers, about 50 were manufactured in total. The lessons learned from the Mark I and II were instrumental in the development of the Mark IV, which would become the primary tank of the British Army during the later stages of World War I. While the Mark II may not have seen extensive combat, its value lay in the lessons it taught its creators, providing invaluable experience that would shape the future of tank warfare. The development of the Mark III tank was a critical stage in the evolution of British heavy tanks during World War I. Built in 1917, the Mark III served as a transitional model, much like the Mark II, which was designed with the primary purpose of testing specific new design elements that were then incorporated into the significantly more successful Mark IV. Despite its limited production, only 50 units were made. The Mark III incorporated several key improvements that would significantly enhance the performance of subsequent tank models. One of the most significant innovations of the Mark III was the inclusion of an improved steering system. The earlier models required the combined efforts of the driver and the gearsman to steer the tank. The Mark III introduced a new, simplified system known as the Wilson Epicyclic Steering System, which allowed the driver alone to control the vehicle's direction. This system made the tank more responsive and easier to control, and it became standard in British tanks for the rest of the war. However, this advanced steering mechanism was complicated and took time to produce, and therefore, only a few Mark III tanks were equipped with it. The remainder retained the old system of the Mark I and II, using 2 gearsmen, though it was less efficient. In terms of armor, the Mark III retained the thickness of the Mark II but made changes in its arrangement. It was designed with a new tumble-home effect, in which the top of the sides angled inward, reducing the tank's overall width and making it less of a target. While it didn't offer a great deal of practical advantage, this feature would be further refined in later models. The internal configuration remained largely similar to the Mark II. It still lacked adequate ventilation and was prone to overheating. The engine was not separated from the crew compartment, leading to noise, heat, and noxious fumes becoming issues for the crew. Despite the improvements in the Mark III, it was never used in combat. Like the Mark II, the Mark III was primarily a training and development vehicle, acting as a stepping stone towards the more sophisticated Mark IV. The Wilson steering mechanism and other changes trialed in the Mark III would be standard in the Mark IV and subsequent models, providing them with better maneuverability and overall performance. Thus, the Mark III played a significant role in the evolution of the tank, serving as a test bed for technological advancements that would become crucial to the success of future tanks. The Mark III was an evolutionary rather than revolutionary design in the progression of British tank development. It represented a middle point, striving to improve on the problems of the Mark I and II while laying the groundwork for the much more successful Mark IV. The Mark III was similar in appearance to its predecessors, retaining the characteristic rhomboidal shape designed to cross trenches and navigate difficult terrain. It measured approximately 26 feet in length, 10 feet in height, and 13 feet in width, roughly similar to the dimensions of the Mark II. The significant innovation in the Mark III was the inclusion of the Wilson epicyclic steering mechanism. This system allowed the tank to be steered by a single driver, a significant improvement over the cumbersome and labor-intensive dual-man control of the earlier models. The gearboxes for the steering mechanism were housed in armored casings on either side of the tank to protect them from damage. However, due to the complex nature of the Wilson steering system, only a small number of Mark IIIs were fitted with it. The others retained the old steering system with two gearsmen. Despite this, the Wilson system's trial in the Mark III laid the foundation for its widespread adoption in later tank models. The Mark III also experimented with changes in armor design. The new tumble-home effect, where the top sides of the tank sloped inward, was an attempt to reduce the tank's profile and make it a smaller target for enemy fire. While this didn't provide significant practical advantages, it reflected the ongoing efforts to improve tank design and survivability. Internally, the Mark III continued to struggle with the issues that had plagued the earlier models. The engine was still located within the crew compartment, resulting in unbearable noise, heat, and exhaust fumes. The lack of suspension made the ride very rough, and the limited visibility from inside the tank made operation challenging. The Mark III was never intended for mass production or frontline service. Only about 50 units were manufactured, serving primarily as training machines to familiarize crews with the new steering system and for testing the new design elements. Despite its limited use, the Mark III served a vital role in tank development. The lessons learned from its design and operation, particularly the adoption of the Wilson steering mechanism, significantly influenced the design of later tanks, setting the stage for the much more successful Mark IV. The Mark IV was the British tank that truly left its mark on World War I. Born from the lessons learned from the Mark I to III tanks, it was produced in significantly larger numbers than its predecessors, and it was the first British tank to be used en masse on the battlefield. Launched in May 1917, the Mark IV was similar in appearance to the Mark I to III tanks, with the classic rhomboidal shape designed for crossing trenches. However, numerous improvements made it more reliable, effective, and survivable on the battlefield. A crucial innovation introduced in the Mark IV was the wider application of the Wilson epicyclic steering mechanism first trialed in the Mark III. This system allowed a single driver to control the vehicle's direction, increasing its maneuverability and response time. In terms of armor, the Mark IV used a thicker and better quality plate compared to earlier models, providing the crew with more protection from enemy fire. Also, some Mark IVs were equipped with spuds or grousers, detachable extensions on the tracks to help prevent the tank from slipping on muddy ground. Inside, the Mark IV showed some improvement over its predecessors. While it still lacked a separate engine compartment, efforts were made to improve the conditions for the crew. Improved ventilation systems were installed, although noise and heat remained significant issues. The armament in the Mark IV was more robust than its predecessors. Male versions were equipped with 57mm guns and machine guns, while female versions carried machine guns only. This distinction allowed the tanks to be used more flexibly depending on the mission. One key operational change was that the Mark IV tanks were deployed in larger numbers, allowing them to make a significant impact on the battlefield. The Battle of Cambrai in November 1917 was a particularly noteworthy engagement where the Mark IVs were used en masse, resulting in significant gains for the British forces and marking a turning point in the use of tanks in warfare. In total, around 1,200 Mark IV tanks were built. They served on all fronts where British forces were engaged and even found their way into the hands of the American Expeditionary Forces. Although still plagued with reliability issues and other operational problems, the Mark IV was a major step forward in tank development. It demonstrated the potential of armored warfare on a scale not seen before, and it set the stage for future advancements in tank design and tactics. As such, it played a critical role in shaping the course of World War I and the future of armored warfare. The Mark IV tank was indeed a significant milestone in the history of armored warfare. Building on the lessons learned from its predecessors, it represented the maturing of early tank design into a more practical and effective weapon. Aesthetically, the Mark IV retained the rhomboidal shape of the previous Marks, designed to navigate the difficult trench-filled landscapes of World War I. However, it differed in several key aspects that made it a more formidable instrument of war. A standout feature of the Mark IV was the comprehensive incorporation of the Wilson epicyclic steering system, a key improvement over the older steering mechanism. This new system significantly enhanced the maneuverability and responsiveness of the tank, while reducing the crew requirement for steering. In terms of armament, the Mark IV maintained the concept of male and female tanks. The male tanks were fitted with two 6-pounder guns and 3.303 Lewis machine guns, providing a mix of anti-fortification and anti-infantry firepower. The female versions were equipped with 5.303 Lewis machine guns for a purely anti-infantry role. This distinction allowed commanders to deploy the tanks according to the specific demands of the battlefield. The armor of the Mark IV was upgraded to provide better protection to the crew. It employed a hardened steel that was more resistant to bullets and shell fragments, offering enhanced survivability in the face of enemy fire. Despite these advancements, the Mark IV still struggled with some of the issues that had affected its predecessors. The engine, still housed within the main compartment, made conditions inside the tank incredibly harsh, with high levels of noise, heat, and exhaust fumes. Nonetheless, incremental improvements in ventilation and noise reduction were implemented to make the crew's experience somewhat more bearable. A key operational shift that came with the Mark IV was the use of these tanks en masse. Unlike the earlier Marks, which were deployed in small numbers, the Mark IV saw large-scale use. The most notable demonstration of this was the Battle of Cambrai in 1917, where about 400 Mark IV tanks were used in the initial assault, achieving significant success and demonstrating the potential of tank warfare on a grand scale. The Mark IV was not without its faults, but it represented a major step forward from the experimental nature of the earlier Marks. By combining the hard-learned lessons from its predecessors with innovative new features, the Mark IV set the stage for the future of tank warfare. Despite its teething problems, it symbolized the realization of the tank as a decisive weapon on the battlefield and laid the groundwork for future developments in armored warfare. The unveiling of the Mark V in 1918 marked another step forward in British tank technology. Although it outwardly resembled its predecessors, it was, in fact, a significantly more capable machine. The Mark V was the first tank to fully realize the potential of the Wilson steering system, which, coupled with a more powerful engine and several other improvements, made it more responsive and easier to handle than previous models. The male Mark V tank was fitted with two 6-pounder guns and up to 6 machine guns, while the female variant carried machine guns only. The armor was of similar thickness to the Mark IV but was of higher quality, providing better protection against small arms fire and shrapnel. Inside the Mark V, conditions for the crew had been improved. The engine, while still in the same compartment as the crew, was better insulated to reduce noise and heat. A rudimentary form of suspension had also been introduced to improve the ride quality over rough terrain. However, the defining moment that set the Mark series tanks on their long trajectory of dominance came in the post-war period. After the war, there was an abundance of surplus Mark V tanks and spare parts, making it a cost-effective option for many countries' militaries. Furthermore, the Mark V had proved itself to be a reliable and robust design during the war, gaining a reputation for durability and effectiveness. In this alternate timeline, instead of pushing for new designs like the medium Mark A, also known as the Whippet, or the subsequent designs that would lead to the cruisers and infantry tanks of World War II, British engineers focused on refining and upgrading the Mark series. This process led to the development of the Mark VI, which incorporated a fully enclosed and separately compartmented engine, an improved transmission, and a rotating turret, a departure from the side-mounted sponsons of the earlier Marks. The adoption of the rotating turret was a significant evolution for the Mark series, offering a significant increase in the tank's firepower and tactical flexibility. However, the basic rhomboidal design and the heavy armor of the original Marks were retained, maintaining the tank's ability to cross trenches and navigate rough terrain. By focusing on incremental improvements and upgrades rather than entirely new designs, the British military was able to continuously improve the performance, reliability, and survivability of the Mark series. This focus on refinement over revolution, coupled with the Mark series' reputation and widespread use, allowed it to remain dominant on the battlefields of the 20th century in this timeline. By the 1930s, the Mark series was established as the benchmark for tank design globally. As tensions rose and the world moved inexorably towards World War II, the Mark tanks were set to play a critical role once again on the battlefields of Europe. The Mark V was indeed an evolutionary leap in the Mark series of British tanks. Assembled for the first time in 1918, it incorporated many lessons learned from earlier designs and benefited from advances in technology and manufacturing. One of the defining features of the Mark V was its significantly improved engine. Earlier versions of the Mark series had been powered by a Daimler 105 HP engine, but the Mark V was upgraded to a new, more powerful Ricardo 6-cylinder engine, which delivered 150 horsepower. This gave the Mark V a top speed of about 4.6 miles per hour, a modest improvement over the Mark IV. The increased power output of the engine, combined with the full integration of the Wilson epicyclic steering system, dramatically improved the Mark V's mobility. It could now cross difficult terrain more quickly and maneuver more deftly, making it more versatile on the battlefield. Externally, the Mark V retained the rhomboidal shape of its predecessors, necessary for navigating trenches and difficult terrain. The armor was similar in thickness to the Mark IV, but its quality had improved, offering better resistance to enemy fire. The design and positioning of the male and female sponsons were slightly revised to allow for better firing angles and field of view. Internally, conditions for the crew were enhanced in the Mark V. The engine was better insulated, reducing the noise and heat inside the tank. However, the Mark V still lacked a separate engine compartment, so fumes remained an issue. A basic form of suspension had been added to the tank, providing a slightly more comfortable ride over rough ground. In terms of armament, the male Mark V was fitted with 2 6-pounder guns and up to 6 machine guns, providing a potent mix of firepower for tackling enemy fortifications and infantry. The female version carried only machine guns, specializing in anti-infantry roles. Produced in significant numbers, approximately 400 units, the Mark V saw service in numerous battlefields of World War I. Its combination of improved mobility, better protection, and enhanced firepower made it a formidable weapon, demonstrating the ongoing refinement and maturation of tank technology. The development of the Mark V and its success on the battlefield also set the stage for the continued evolution of the Mark series. As the world marched towards another global conflict, the Mark series of tanks, with their proven design and capability, stood ready to meet the challenges of the future. As the Roaring Twenties commenced, there was an impetus in Britain to further refine the well-established and successful Mark series of tanks. The result was the Mark VI, a blend of tradition and innovation that embodied Britain's commitment to armoured warfare. From the outside, the Mark VI retained the characteristic rhomboidal shape of its predecessors. This design, with its high ground clearance and broad tracks that spanned the full length and width of the hull, had proved effective at navigating the complex network of trenches that typified World War I battlefields. But while the Mark VI's external profile was familiar, its internal configuration represented a significant departure from previous models. For the first time, the Mark VI separated the crew compartment from the engine room, drastically improving crew conditions by reducing heat, noise, and the danger from potential engine fires. This compartmentalization was made possible by the more compact Ricardo engine, which also offered enhanced performance and reliability compared to previous models. The Mark VI also introduced a fully rotating turret, a marked shift from the side-mounted sponsons of the previous models. This was a significant step forward in tank design, offering a wider field of fire and more flexibility in engaging targets. The turret was initially equipped with a 6-pounder gun and a coaxial machine gun, while 2 additional machine guns were located in the hull to provide all-round defensive coverage. Despite these advances, the Mark VI kept the concept of male and female versions from previous models. The male tank carried the 6-pounder gun for engaging enemy fortifications and tanks, while the female version was equipped with multiple machine guns for anti-infantry and anti-aircraft roles. The adoption of a fully enclosed, separately compartmented engine and a rotating turret marked a significant evolution in the Mark series. They demonstrated that while the British Army remained committed to the proven design of the Mark series, they were also willing to embrace new technologies and concepts to enhance the capabilities of their tanks. The introduction of the Mark VI tank was an affirmation of Britain's belief in the future of armoured warfare. With its combination of proven design principles and innovative features, the Mark VI set a new standard for tanks. It showed that the Mark series could adapt and evolve to meet the challenges of modern warfare, setting the stage for its continued dominance on the battlefield as the world moved towards another great conflict. The development of the Mark VI represented a significant shift in British tank design. Beyond refining the existing elements of the Mark series, it introduced innovative features that would influence the course of future tank designs. In terms of its external appearance, the Mark VI maintained the recognizable rhomboidal silhouette of its predecessors. This was no accident. The ability to traverse the rough, broken terrain of the World War I battlefields had been a significant advantage of the Mark series and was deemed worth preserving. Internally, however, the Mark VI was a considerable departure from the previous Marks. The decision to separate the crew compartment from the engine room was driven by a desire to improve the conditions for the crew. The compact Ricardo engine, more powerful and reliable, was enclosed in its own compartment, resulting in a dramatic reduction in heat, noise, and the risk of fumes in the crew's space. One of the defining features of the Mark VI was the introduction of a fully rotating turret, replacing the side-mounted sponsons of earlier Marks. Equipped with a 6-pounder gun and a coaxial machine gun, this turret offered the crew a 360-degree field of fire and greater tactical flexibility. 2 additional machine guns were situated in the hull for defense against infantry and aircraft. The concept of male and female versions was retained in the Mark VI. The male tank carried the 6-pounder gun in the turret for engaging enemy fortifications and tanks, while the female version was outfitted with several machine guns for anti-infantry and anti-aircraft roles. This division of duties allowed the Mark VI to be employed effectively in a variety of combat scenarios. Despite these significant improvements, the Mark VI was not without its challenges. Its mechanical complexity and the need for a larger crew made it more resource-intensive to produce and operate. However, the advantages it offered in terms of enhanced combat capabilities and improved crew conditions made it a worthwhile investment. The Mark VI served as a testament to the adaptability and versatility of the Mark series design. It demonstrated that this lineage of tanks, which had originated in the crucible of World War I, was capable of evolving to meet the demands of modern warfare. With its blend of time-tested design and innovative features, the Mark VI continued the Mark series legacy of ruggedness and reliability, setting the stage for its sustained dominance on the battlefields of the mid-20th century. By the time the 1940s dawned, the world was once again on the brink of a major conflict. The British, having heavily invested in the continued evolution of the Mark series of tanks, introduced the Mark VII just as World War II was getting underway. In the face of a new global conflict, the Mark VII aimed to combine the best aspects of its predecessors while introducing advancements to meet the growing demands of modern warfare. Building upon the foundation set by the Mark VI, the Mark VII continued the use of a separate engine compartment and a rotating turret, while pushing the boundaries of design and technology further. The silhouette of the Mark VII was still unmistakably a Mark series tank, with the characteristic rhomboidal shape that had been the series' trademark since its inception. However, it was a significantly larger and heavier machine, equipped with thicker, sloping armor designed to deflect incoming shells and to better withstand the increasingly powerful anti-tank weapons of the era. The Mark VII was powered by an even more powerful engine, capable of propelling the massive tank at comparable speeds to the Mark VI, despite the increase in weight. This kept the Mark VII mobile and capable of navigating a variety of terrains, from open fields to ruined cities. The fully rotating turret of the Mark VII was larger and could house a more potent main gun, the new QF 6-pounder, and a coaxial machine gun. The turret offered a full 360-degree field of fire, allowing the Mark VII to engage targets in any direction. The tank was also equipped with multiple secondary machine guns positioned around the hull for additional defense against infantry and aircraft. The male and female designations continued with the Mark VII. However, with the lines of battle becoming more fluid and the nature of warfare changing, the distinction between the two began to blur. Both versions were capable of carrying the QF 6-pounder, but the female tanks were often used in more specialized roles such as command tanks, mobile artillery, or recovery vehicles. The Mark 7 represented the peak of Mark series design as the world descended once more into global conflict. It carried with it the legacy of the earlier tanks in the series, while pushing the boundaries of technology and design. As World War II unfolded, the Mark 7 would face new challenges and tests, but it stood ready to meet them, a symbol of British resilience and ingenuity. As the Mark series was evolving in Britain, Germany too was developing its armoured warfare capabilities. Still stung by the restrictions placed on it by the Treaty of Versailles, which prohibited the development of tanks, Germany had fallen behind Britain in armoured technology. Despite these restrictions, there were clandestine efforts to advance German tank designs. These efforts eventually led to the development of a prototype tank, codenamed the Panzerkampfwagen 6, but often referred to colloquially as the Proto-Tiger, a reference to its intended role as a powerful predator on the battlefield. However, the Proto-Tiger was a far cry from the Tiger tanks of another timeline. It was smaller and more lightly armored, with a fixed, forward-facing gun instead of a rotating turret. The engine was underpowered, resulting in slow speeds and limited maneuverability. In its initial combat encounters with the British Mark 7 during the early stages of World War II, the Proto-Tiger's limitations quickly became apparent. Its fixed gun and sluggish mobility were significant handicaps in the fluid, fast-paced armored engagements. The thick, sloping armor of the Mark 7 proved more than a match for the Proto-Tiger's weaponry, and the British tank's superior speed and maneuverability allowed it to outflank and destroy the German prototypes with relative ease. The poor performance of the Proto-Tiger reinforced the belief in the superiority of the Mark series of tanks. Germany's attempt to deviate from the proven design principles of the Mark series had resulted in a less effective tank. This was a stark demonstration of the risks associated with abandoning a successful design in favor of unproven concepts. The Mark 7's domination of the Proto-Tiger on the battlefield firmly established the Mark series as the pinnacle of tank design in this alternate timeline. While other nations would continue to explore and experiment with their own designs, the Mark series' proven track record of success led many to conclude that the British had found the optimal design for a tank. This victory further entrenched the Mark series as the standard-bearer of armored warfare as World War II continued to unfold. As World War II progressed, the escalating arms race demanded the development of ever more capable armored vehicles. In response to these demands, Britain introduced the Mark 8 in 1943. The Mark 8 was a formidable evolution of the Mark series, integrating several key improvements over the Mark 7 while still retaining the series' characteristic rhomboidal shape and fundamental design principles. The hull of the Mark 8 was made from high-quality armor steel, carefully sloped to improve deflection of enemy fire. This armor was significantly thicker than that of its predecessor, providing enhanced protection against the increasingly powerful anti-tank weapons on the battlefield. In terms of propulsion, the Mark 8 was equipped with a new, high-output engine. Despite the tank's increased weight due to the thicker armor, this engine enabled the Mark 8 to maintain, and even slightly surpass, the speed of the Mark 7. The Mark 8's turret was also upgraded. It was now larger, housing a newly developed QF 75mm gun that could fire both high-explosive and armor-piercing rounds, giving it more versatility against a wider range of targets. The tank also retained multiple machine guns for defense against infantry and aircraft. Despite these advances, the male and female versions of the Mark 8 continued to coexist. However, the differences between them were becoming less pronounced, with both versions equipped with the new QF 75mm gun. The female tanks were often assigned specialized roles, such as command tanks or recovery vehicles, taking advantage of their ability to carry additional equipment and personnel. The introduction of the Mark 8 reinforced the supremacy of the Mark series on the battlefield. With its enhanced armor, superior firepower, and maintained mobility, it represented a formidable force in the face of evolving enemy tactics and technology. While the Mark series' dominance was increasingly challenged by advancements in anti-tank warfare, the Mark 8 showed that the series was more than capable of evolving to meet these challenges. Despite attempts by Germany and other nations to catch up, the Mark 8's successful integration of protection, firepower, and mobility continued to set the standard for armored warfare as World War II raged on. The Mark 8, a significant evolution of the Mark series, was a potent symbol of Britain's commitment to maintaining the supremacy of its armored forces during World War II. Built to tackle the most formidable battlefield conditions, it brought together a series of enhancements that pushed the capabilities of the Mark series to a new level. Externally, the Mark 8 maintained the distinctive rhomboidal profile that had become synonymous with the British heavy tank. But beneath the surface, it was a vastly superior machine, designed to withstand the increasingly lethal anti-tank weapons coming into play on the war's chaotic battlefields. The hull of the Mark 8 was crafted from high-grade armor steel, with carefully calculated slopes designed to deflect incoming shells more effectively. The thickness of this armor far surpassed that of the Mark 7, granting the Mark 8 a level of resilience that allowed it to shrug off hits that would have immobilized its predecessor. Propelling this behemoth was a state-of-the-art, high-output engine. Despite the Mark 8's increased weight, this engine granted it a speed that equaled, and in some conditions even surpassed, that of the lighter Mark 7. This ability to retain mobility despite increased armor was a testament to the advanced engineering that went into the creation of the Mark 8. The rotating turret of the Mark 8 was its centerpiece. Larger than its predecessor, it accommodated the newly developed QF 75mm gun. This weapon was capable of firing both high-explosive and armor-piercing rounds, making the Mark 8 a formidable opponent for a wide range of enemy targets, from fortified positions to armored vehicles. Multiple machine guns continued to be an integral part of the tank's armament, providing defense against infantry and low-flying aircraft. The male and female designations of the Mark series continued with the Mark 8, but the distinctions were becoming increasingly blurred. Both versions were equipped with the QF 75mm main gun, while female tanks were often adapted for specialized roles like command tanks, mobile artillery, or recovery vehicles. The Mark 8, with its impressive armor, versatile firepower, and relentless mobility, continued to embody the core principles of the Mark series. As World War II raged on, it became a symbol of the British commitment to the rhomboidal design, a proven success story that seemed to become more robust with each iteration. Even as Germany and other nations attempted to keep pace, the Mark 8 continued to stand as a titan on the battlefield, a standard to which other tanks were compared and found wanting. The Mark 9, introduced in 1945, was developed in the crucible of World War II. With the ever-increasing demands of the global conflict, the British military recognized the need for a further evolution in their armored capabilities. A desire for an even more formidable main battle tank, capable of confronting and overcoming the most challenging threats on the battlefield, led to the creation of the Mark 9. Maintaining the now iconic rhomboidal design, the Mark 9 was larger, heavier, and more intimidating than any of its predecessors. The new tank's armor was significantly thicker, designed to withstand direct hits from the largest anti-tank guns. Despite this considerable increase in weight, the Mark 9 was equipped with an ultra-high-performance engine, providing the tank with impressive speed and mobility across a variety of terrains. One of the most notable improvements in the Mark 9 was its turret, which housed an upgraded 17-pounder gun, the most potent British anti-tank gun of the time. This weapon offered a significant boost in firepower, capable of penetrating even the thickest armor at long range. The turret was fully rotatable, providing a 360-degree field of fire. Complementing this were several secondary machine guns mounted in various positions around the tank, offering additional defense against infantry and aircraft. The male and female variants of the Mark 9 differed mainly in their specialized roles. Male tanks, equipped with additional armor and the upgraded 17-pounder gun, were intended for engaging enemy tanks and fortifications. Female tanks, often equipped with a variety of support equipment, were used in roles such as command tanks, mobile artillery, and recovery vehicles. The Mark 9 was also the first tank in the series to feature a rudimentary form of reactive armor. Small, explosive-filled panels were attached to the tank's exterior. Upon being hit, these would detonate outwards, disrupting the penetrating jet of shaped charge warheads, which were becoming increasingly common on the battlefield. Despite the considerable advancements in tank technology that the Mark 9 brought to the table, it was not without its drawbacks. The tank's increased size and weight made transport and logistics more challenging. However, the overwhelming battlefield performance of the Mark IX often outweighed these concerns, and it was seen as the pinnacle of the Mark series, cementing its place in the annals of armored warfare history. As the war came to a close, the Mark IX stood as a symbol of British technological prowess and a testament to the enduring relevance of the rhomboidal design principles first embodied in the Mark I. The Mark IX was a manifestation of Britain's commitment to maximizing the potential of the rhomboidal design. Introduced in 1945, during the twilight years of World War II, it was a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of British engineers who had consistently improved upon a design that had begun nearly 3 decades earlier. Externally, the Mark IX retained the characteristic rhomboidal shape that had defined the Mark series since its inception. However, it was noticeably larger and more imposing than its predecessors, indicative of its superior capabilities. Its armor was significantly thicker, offering enhanced resistance to the ever-increasing power of anti-tank weaponry. This was made possible by advancements in metallurgy and armor design that had been made during the course of the war. Powering this behemoth was an ultra-high-performance engine, a marvel of engineering that provided the Mark IX with the mobility required to maneuver effectively on the battlefield despite its increased weight. The tank's superior speed and agility allowed it to take on a variety of roles, from engaging enemy tanks to providing support for infantry operations. The most significant upgrade in the Mark IX was its main gun. The turret now housed a 17-pounder gun, a major leap from the 75mm gun of the Mark VIII. This new gun gave the Mark IX a dramatic increase in firepower, allowing it to penetrate the armor of even the most heavily protected enemy tanks. In addition to the main gun, the Mark IX was also armed with several secondary machine guns strategically positioned around the tank to fend off infantry and aircraft. The male and female distinctions still existed in the Mark IX, with male tanks being heavily armored for frontline engagement and female tanks often fulfilling roles like command tanks, mobile artillery, or recovery vehicles. One groundbreaking feature of the Mark IX was the introduction of a rudimentary form of reactive armor. This was a response to the increasing use of shaped charge warheads by enemy forces. These panels, filled with explosives and attached to the tank's exterior, would detonate outwards upon impact, disrupting the penetrating jet of the shaped charge warheads. Despite the impressive battlefield performance of the Mark IX, the tank was not without its challenges. Its size and weight presented logistical difficulties, making it harder to transport and requiring more resources to operate. However, these issues were often seen as a small price to pay for the considerable advantages the Mark IX offered on the battlefield. With its array of technological advancements and formidable capabilities, the Mark IX epitomized the pinnacle of the Mark series and represented the zenith of the rhomboidal design philosophy. Even as World War II drew to a close, the Mark IX stood as a symbol of British engineering prowess and the enduring effectiveness of the design that had first seen service in the fields of Flanders in the First World War. As World War II concluded and the Cold War era began, the Mark IX had proven to be a formidable force on the battlefield, but the rapidly advancing pace of technology and new strategic realities dictated the need for further evolution. Thus, in 1950, Britain introduced the Mark X, the latest and most advanced iteration of the Mark series. Continuing the tradition of the rhomboidal design, the Mark X was larger and more intimidating than its predecessors. Its armor was composed of composite materials, a new innovation that provided enhanced protection against both kinetic and shaped charge warheads. In addition, the tank's underside was specifically designed to withstand landmine and IED explosions, a recognition of the changing nature of warfare. The Mark X was powered by an advanced gas turbine engine. This high-performance engine was smaller and lighter than its predecessors, yet provided the same power, enabling the Mark X to maintain impressive speed and maneuverability despite its increased weight. The turret of the Mark X housed a 105mm Royal Ordnance L7 gun, one of the most powerful and effective tank guns of its era. This gun could fire a variety of rounds, including high-explosive, armor-piercing discarding SABO, APDS, and high-explosive anti-tank, HEAT, rounds. Complementing the main gun were multiple secondary machine guns, along with anti-aircraft and anti-missile systems, making the Mark X an adaptable force on the battlefield. The tank maintained the male and female versions, but the distinctions had become largely symbolic. Both versions were equipped with the 105mm gun, and the female tanks could carry additional equipment for specialized roles such as command and control, recovery, or mobile artillery. For the first time in the Mark series, the Mark X incorporated sophisticated electronics, including a ballistic computer for more accurate fire control, and a rudimentary infrared night vision system. The tank also featured improved crew comforts, such as better ventilation, and an internal heating system, acknowledging the importance of crew endurance in prolonged engagements. Despite these advanced features, the Mark X continued to face challenges. Its large size and heavy weight made transport and logistics more complex. Furthermore, the increasing prevalence of guided anti-tank missiles necessitated the constant updating of the tank's defenses. Yet, the Mark X stood as a testament to the enduring success of the Mark series and the rhomboidal design. As the world moved into the age of nuclear power and space exploration, the Mark X remained a formidable and relevant force in the realm of ground warfare, ready to face the uncertain challenges of a rapidly changing world. The Mark X was a testament to Britain's commitment to the Mark series and to the rhomboidal design philosophy. Introduced in 1950, this behemoth incorporated the latest in tank technology and design concepts. The iconic rhomboidal design was more pronounced, giving the Mark X a distinctive silhouette that commanded respect on the battlefield. The Mark X's armor was a significant leap forward in defensive capabilities. The use of composite materials gave the Mark X a substantial increase in protection, particularly against kinetic energy and shaped charge warheads, which were becoming increasingly prevalent in post-World War II conflicts. Additionally, the design of the underside of the tank was specifically reinforced to withstand landmines and improvised explosive devices, IEDs, a growing threat in asymmetric warfare. Powering the Mark X was an advanced gas turbine engine. This engine was smaller and lighter than those of its predecessors, yet it delivered an equivalent amount of power, giving the Mark X impressive speed and mobility on the battlefield. This engine also proved to be more fuel efficient, which was an important consideration given the increased weight of the tank. One of the most notable improvements in the Mark X was its main armament. The 105mm Royal Ordnance L7 gun was a formidable weapon that provided a substantial increase in firepower over the 17-pounder gun of the Mark IX. This gun was capable of firing a variety of rounds, including high-explosive, armor-piercing discarding SABO, APDS, and high-explosive anti-tank, heat, rounds, which gave the Mark X the ability to engage a wide range of targets. Complementing the main gun were multiple secondary machine guns, which provided close-in defense against infantry and low-flying aircraft. For the first time in the Mark series, the Mark X was also equipped with anti-aircraft and anti-missile systems, making it a multifaceted threat on the battlefield. Inside the Mark X, the crew had access to state-of-the-art electronics, including a ballistic computer that greatly improved the accuracy of the main gun, and a rudimentary infrared night vision system, which gave the Mark X an edge in night operations. The Mark X also acknowledged the importance of crew comfort, offering better ventilation and an internal heating system, thereby enhancing crew endurance in long-duration missions. Despite its advanced features and impressive capabilities, the Mark X was not without its challenges. Its sheer size and weight made transportation and logistics a complex task. Additionally, the advent of guided anti-tank missiles meant that the Mark X's defenses had to be continually updated to stay ahead of the ever-evolving threats on the battlefield. Yet, the Mark X was the culmination of decades of British tank development, encapsulating the best of the Mark series and the rhomboidal design philosophy. As the Cold War continued to shape global geopolitics, the Mark X stood as a symbol of Britain's technological prowess and military might, ready to meet the challenges of the new era. In the 1960s, amidst the intensifying Cold War tensions and the advent of advanced technologies, the British military initiated the development of the Mark 11, the next iteration in the iconic Mark series. The tank was introduced in 1965 and was designed to maintain the dominance of the Mark series in a rapidly changing battlefield scenario. As always, the rhomboidal design remained the cornerstone of the Mark 11, but this time, it came with a host of novel features. The armor of the Mark 11 was built from a newly developed composite material, known as Cobham armor. Named after the location of the British Tank Research Centre where it was developed, this new armor was highly resistant to both kinetic energy penetrators and chemical energy warheads, providing superior protection compared to traditional steel armor. The Mark 11 was powered by an experimental compact nuclear reactor. While the concept of a nuclear-powered tank was not new, the Mark 11 was the first operational tank to use such a power source. This gave the tank virtually unlimited operational range and significantly reduced logistical concerns related to fuel supply. The reactor was shielded to protect the crew from radiation, and in the event of a catastrophic hit, it was designed to seal itself off to prevent environmental contamination. The main armament of the Mark 11 was a 120mm L11A5 rifled gun, a significant improvement over the 105mm gun of the Mark X. This gun had excellent armor penetration capabilities and could fire a variety of rounds, including the new APFSTS, armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot, rounds. For close-in defense and anti-infantry roles, the Mark 11 was equipped with several secondary machine guns and a new anti-aircraft system capable of engaging low-flying aircraft and helicopters. The Mark 11 was the first tank in the Mark series to include an integrated active protection system, known as Hard Kill. This system could detect incoming anti-tank guided missiles and rockets and launch countermeasures to destroy or deflect them before they could hit the tank. Inside, the Mark 11 featured a host of advanced systems designed to assist the crew and improve battlefield performance. These included an advanced fire control system with a digital ballistic computer, a laser range finder, and a thermal imaging system for effective night and all-weather operations. The tank also had an advanced communication system, allowing for real-time data sharing and coordination with Allied units. While the introduction of the Mark 11 represented a significant leap forward in armored warfare, it also marked a dramatic increase in complexity and cost. Each Mark 11 was a formidable force on the battlefield, but they were expensive to produce and maintain. However, their sheer power and advanced capabilities solidified the Mark series' position as one of the most formidable tank lines in the world, even as the rhomboidal design entered its sixth decade of service. Introduced in 1975, the Mark 12 was the next evolutionary step in the Mark series, further solidifying Britain's commitment to the rhomboidal tank design philosophy. The Mark 12's silhouette was similar to its predecessor, but closer inspection revealed numerous upgrades. The armor of the Mark 12 was an upgraded version of the Cobham armor used on the Mark 11. It was denser and arranged in a new modular configuration, allowing for damaged sections to be replaced quickly on the battlefield. The armor also included a layer of reactive material designed to explode outward upon impact, neutralizing the effect of incoming shaped charge warheads. The Mark 12 continued the use of a compact nuclear reactor for propulsion, providing the tank with an unlimited operational range and reducing the logistical burden. The reactor was further miniaturized and its shielding improved to reduce the risk to the crew. The main armament of the Mark 12 was a 125mm L30A1 smoothbore gun, a departure from the rifled guns used in the earlier Mark series tanks. The smoothbore design allowed for higher muzzle velocities, enhancing the penetration capabilities of the tank's rounds. The gun could fire a variety of rounds, including the latest APFSTS-T, armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot, tracer, and heat, high-explosive anti-tank, rounds. In addition to this, the Mark 12 was equipped with an advanced anti-missile system and several secondary machine guns for close-in defense. The Hard Kill active protection system of the Mark 11 was upgraded and renamed Iron Fist in the Mark 12. It was more sophisticated and capable of engaging a wider range of threats, including top attack missiles. The Mark 12 was also the first tank in the Mark series to incorporate stealth technology, reducing its radar and infrared signatures and making it harder for the enemy to detect. Inside the tank, the Mark 12 featured an improved fire control system, incorporating a more accurate digital ballistic computer, a more powerful laser range finder, and a second-generation thermal imaging system. The tank also boasted a sophisticated battlefield management system, providing real-time data about friendly and enemy forces and aiding in command and control. To further improve crew efficiency, the Mark 12 had an autoloader, reducing the crew size to 3. Despite the increasing complexity and cost, the Mark 12 proved to be a worthy successor in the Mark series. Its enhanced capabilities, coupled with the advancements in crew safety and comfort, ensured that the Mark series and the rhomboidal design continued to remain at the forefront of armored warfare technology. Introduced in the mid-1980s, at the height of the Cold War, the Mark 13 was designed to counter the growing sophistication of Soviet armored warfare. The British engineers, working closely with their NATO allies, put all their knowledge and experience into designing this impressive iteration of the Mark series. The Mark 13 maintained the rhomboidal silhouette that had become synonymous with the Mark series, but its armor was a significant departure from its predecessors. The Mark 13 was the first tank to feature a new type of reactive armor, known as Dorchester armor. This advanced composite armor included layers of ceramic and depleted uranium, offering unparalleled protection against all known types of anti-tank projectiles. The propulsion system of the Mark 13 was another step forward. Engineers had improved the compact nuclear reactor, making it safer and more efficient, but also added a pair of auxiliary jet engines. These engines were designed to provide the tank with short bursts of speed, making it highly maneuverable on the battlefield. The main gun of the Mark 13 was a 130mm L-35A1 smoothbore gun. This high-velocity gun could fire a variety of munitions, including the most advanced APFST and heat rounds. The tank was also equipped with an upgraded Iron Fist active protection system, an advanced anti-missile system, and a suite of secondary machine guns. The Mark 13 was equipped with a new generation of the fire control system, incorporating a cutting-edge digital ballistic computer, a laser range finder with a longer range, and a third-generation thermal imaging system. The tank also had a state-of-the-art battlefield management system, which not only provided real-time data about friendly and enemy forces but could also be connected to airborne and satellite reconnaissance systems, providing a comprehensive view of the battlefield. A major innovation in the Mark 13 was the use of AI systems. A rudimentary artificial intelligence was tasked with controlling the tank's defensive systems, such as the active protection system and anti-missile system, freeing the crew from these duties and allowing them to focus on offensive operations. The AI could also assist the driver, gunner, and commander, making them more effective in their roles. The Mark 13 was also designed with crew comfort in mind. The interior was spacious, with better ergonomics and improved life support systems. The tank even had a small kitchenette, allowing the crew to prepare hot meals during extended operations. Despite its high cost and complexity, the Mark 13 was a game-changer. Its superior protection, firepower, and advanced systems ensured that the Mark series, and the iconic rhomboidal design, remained a dominant force on the battlefield, even in the face of rapidly advancing technology. The Mark 13 truly marked a new era in armored warfare. Unveiled in 1995, the Mark 14 represented a new chapter in British armored warfare. After a century of the iconic rhomboidal design, the Mark 14 demonstrated the timeless potential of this form, yet brought a host of innovations that addressed the changing face of warfare in the late 20th and early 21st century. The Mark 14 retained the rhomboidal shape but incorporated stealth technology into the design to a greater extent than before. Engineers used radar-absorbent materials and a shape designed to scatter radar signals, reducing the tank's visibility on enemy radars. The Mark 14 also had a lower heat signature, making it more challenging to detect using infrared sensors. The armor of the Mark 14 was an evolution of the Dorchester armor used on the Mark 13. The upgraded variant, called Dorchester 2, included a better arrangement of layers, with enhanced reactive properties and an outer layer designed to ablate when struck, further disrupting the path of incoming projectiles. For propulsion, the Mark 14 featured an advanced compact nuclear reactor. The reactor was supplemented by 2 electric motors, one on each track, making the Mark 14 a hybrid vehicle. This arrangement increased efficiency and reduced the mechanical complexity of the drive system. The main gun of the Mark 14 was a 140mm L-45A1 smoothbore gun, offering greater firepower and armor penetration than its predecessor. The tank also had an upgraded Iron Fist active protection system and anti-missile system, along with an array of secondary machine guns. Inside, the Mark 14 was equipped with a fourth-generation fire control system, featuring an advanced digital ballistic computer, a laser rangefinder, and a thermal imaging system. A sophisticated battlefield management system provided real-time situational awareness and allowed for effective coordination with Allied forces. A significant advancement was the AI system, which was more advanced and integrated into all aspects of the tank's operations. It could control the tank's defensive systems, assist the crew, and even operate the tank autonomously if necessary. Despite its advances and higher cost, the Mark 14 became a symbol of Britain's enduring commitment to the Mark series and the rhomboidal design. It was a testament to Britain's ability to innovate and adapt to changing times, proving that the rhomboidal design was still a formidable and effective presence on the modern battlefield. Introduced in 2005, the Mark 15 was the British response to the changing nature of warfare in the 21st century. Built on the lessons learned from previous Mark series tanks, it was a revolutionary design that further cemented the dominance of the rhomboidal shape in British armoured warfare. The Mark 15 maintained the iconic rhomboidal silhouette, but changes were made to the design to improve its stealth characteristics. The armour was covered in a special paint that absorbed radar waves, further reducing the tank's radar cross-section. In addition, heat dispersion systems were installed to minimize the tank's infrared signature. The armour was another advancement in the Dorchester series, known as Dorchester 3. It retained the multi-layer composite arrangement of ceramic and depleted uranium but added nano-ceramic components and an improved reactive layer. These enhancements significantly increased the tank's resistance to both kinetic and chemical energy projectiles. The propulsion system of the Mark 15 was a further refinement of the hybrid system used in the Mark 14. The compact nuclear reactor was made even safer and more efficient, and the electric motors were more powerful, providing the tank with impressive speed and maneuverability. The main gun of the Mark 15 was a 150 mm L50A1 electrothermal chemical gun. This advanced weapon used a plasma cartridge to ignite and control the propellant, providing a higher velocity and more accurate fire than conventional guns. The tank also had an advanced Iron Fist active protection system, an integrated anti-missile system, and an array of secondary machine guns. Inside, the Mark 15 had a fifth-generation fire control system, which included a high-performance digital ballistic computer, a laser rangefinder, and a thermal imaging system. The battlefield management system was upgraded to provide the crew with a comprehensive view of the battlefield, integrating data from satellites, drones, and other Allied units. A groundbreaking feature of the Mark 15 was the highly advanced AI system. This AI could control all the tank's functions, allowing the tank to operate autonomously. However, human oversight was maintained to make critical decisions. The AI could also learn from each mission, improving its performance over time. The Mark 15 also placed great emphasis on crew comfort and safety. It had a fully pressurized cabin with life support systems, allowing the crew to operate in contaminated environments. The cabin was spacious and ergonomic, with advanced communication and entertainment systems for the crew's well-being during extended missions. Despite its high cost, the Mark 15 was well received and proved highly effective in operations. It was a testament to the enduring value of the Mark series and the rhomboidal design, demonstrating once again that these concepts could be adapted to meet the changing demands of modern warfare. Introduced in 2015, the Mark 16, or the Titan, as it was nicknamed, was a leap forward in British armoured warfare. Incorporating the latest advancements in technology and design, the Mark 16 was a testament to the adaptability and resilience of the rhomboidal tank design, even after over a century of use. Despite keeping the classic rhomboidal shape, the Mark 16 presented a sleeker, more angular profile, designed to minimize its radar and infrared signature. Advanced stealth technology was incorporated into the hull material itself, making the tank almost invisible to modern detection systems. The armor of the Mark 16 was a significant departure from the Dorchester series. Named Excalibur, this new armor was composed of a complex lattice of nanocomposite and reactive materials. When struck, the armor could disperse the force of the impact across a larger area, significantly reducing the damage caused by both kinetic and energy-based weapons. The propulsion system was a cutting-edge compact fusion reactor, a huge step forward from the previous nuclear reactors. The fusion reactor provided almost unlimited power, vastly extending the operational range of the tank. It powered 2 electric motors, one for each track, granting the Mark 16 outstanding agility and speed on the battlefield. The main gun was a 150mm L-60A1 railgun, utilizing magnetic fields to launch projectiles at hypersonic speeds. This revolutionary weapon offered unrivaled range and destructive power. Secondary armament included an advanced version of the Iron Fist active protection system, a potent anti-aircraft and anti-missile system, and several secondary machine guns and grenade launchers. Inside, the Mark 16 boasted a 6th-generation fire control system. With quantum computing, advanced optics, and a state-of-the-art battlefield management system, it provided the crew with an unparalleled understanding of the battlefield, integrating data from all available sources, including satellites, drones, and other friendly units. A revolutionary feature of the Mark 16 was the introduction of a fully sentient AI system. Named Merlin, this AI could control all the tank's systems, operate the tank autonomously, learn from each engagement, and even predict enemy tactics based on collected data. However, as in previous models, a human crew was always in place for decision-making. In terms of crew comfort and safety, the Mark 16 was unmatched. The spacious interior was designed to reduce fatigue during long operations, and the life support systems were improved, capable of sustaining the crew in extreme conditions, even in a nuclear, biological, or chemical environment. Despite its immense cost and complex manufacturing process, the Mark 16 marked another milestone in the history of the Mark series and the rhomboidal design. The innovations it brought demonstrated the adaptability and enduring effectiveness of these concepts, ensuring their relevance in the ever-changing landscape of modern warfare. In 2023, the British military revealed the latest addition to their iconic Mark series, the Mark 17. This modern behemoth, also known as the Leviathan, continued the legacy of the rhomboidal design and brought with it unprecedented advancements in tank technology. Aesthetically, the Mark 17 remained faithful to the characteristic rhomboidal design but with a more streamlined and low-profile silhouette for enhanced stealth. Its hull was coated with a new generation of radar-absorbent material that effectively rendered the tank invisible to most detection systems. The armor, a further evolution from the Excalibur series, named Avalon, was a marvel of materials science. It incorporated nanotechnological self-healing capabilities, where microbots within the armor could repair minor damage sustained in the field, thereby prolonging the tank's operational lifespan. The propulsion system was a significant advancement from the Mark 16's compact fusion reactor. It was now a zero-point energy reactor, which drew power from vacuum energy, providing practically infinite power. This powered 2 superconducting electric motors, ensuring high speed and agility. The main weapon was a 155mm L-70A1 particle beam cannon, a revolutionary weapon system capable of delivering concentrated energy blasts at incredible ranges. This, coupled with an upgraded Iron Fist active protection system, anti-aircraft and anti-missile systems, and a variety of secondary weapons, made the Mark 17 a formidable force on the battlefield. Inside, the Mark 17 was equipped with a 7th-generation fire control system. This system was powered by a quantum AI, an advanced descendant of the Merlin AI system, capable of processing vast amounts of data in real time and adapting instantly to changing battlefield conditions. In terms of crew comfort, the Mark 17 was designed to ensure the best possible conditions for its operators. The tank featured advanced life support systems, better ergonomics, and a range of entertainment options. The Mark 17, despite its astronomical cost and complexity, stood as a testament to the enduring relevance of the Mark series and the rhomboidal design in the realm of armored warfare. The introduction of such groundbreaking features as self-healing armor, zero-point energy reactors, and particle beam weaponry, showcased the remarkable adaptability and potential of these iconic symbols of British military power. The Mark 17 was not just a tank, it was a statement of Britain's resolve to remain at the forefront of global defence technology. Even as the Mark series tanks dominated the battlefield, other nations did attempt to create their own armoured vehicles to challenge Britain's supremacy. These attempts, though ambitious, often fell short in the face of the Mark series' technological superiority and battlefield prowess. World War I saw the introduction of several rival tanks to the Mark series. The most notable among these was Germany's A-7V Sturmpanzerwagen. Boasting a boxy, rectangular design and armed with a single 57mm cannon, it was built to counter the British Mark series tanks. However, the A-7V's high center of gravity made it unstable, and its lack of an all-around traverse for its main gun limited its effectiveness in combat. The Mark tanks easily outmatched the A-7V, which suffered from production issues and saw limited deployment. In the interwar period, France developed the Char B1, a heavy tank that aimed to counter the Mark series. It had thick armor and a potent 75mm howitzer, but its slow speed and high fuel consumption made it unsuitable for fast-paced, mobile warfare. The tank could not keep up with the evolving battlefield tactics and technologies represented by the Mark series and was eventually phased out. During World War II, Germany made another significant attempt to challenge the Mark series with the prototype Maus super heavy tank. The Maus was an enormous vehicle, weighing almost 200 tons and equipped with a 128mm gun. However, its colossal weight made it impractical for most bridges, and its slow speed made it an easy target for the fast and agile Mark series tanks. The Maus never moved past the prototype stage due to these shortcomings. The Soviet Union, during the Cold War, made attempts to develop tanks to rival the Mark series. Their most significant effort was the T-35, a heavy tank with multiple turrets. Despite its impressive firepower, the T-35 was slow and mechanically unreliable. It suffered from frequent breakdowns and was incapable of challenging the Mark tanks on the battlefield. In the United States, the M26 Pershing was developed during World War II with the aim of countering the Mark series. The M26 had impressive armor and a 90mm gun, but it suffered from reliability issues and was slower than the Mark tanks. Moreover, its traditional turret design and lack of advanced features made it unable to compete effectively with the Marks, and the M26 was eventually replaced by more modern designs. Despite these attempts and many others, none managed to break the Mark series' hold on the battlefield. The combination of the Mark tanks' advanced technology, their innovative and adaptable rhomboidal design, and the British military's commitment to constant improvement made them an almost insurmountable challenge. The history of armored warfare in this timeline is filled with the husks of failed tank designs, outclassed and outperformed by the formidable Mark series. The global stage saw numerous attempts to dethrone the Mark series tanks throughout the 20th century and into the 21st. Here are a few more of those endeavors that ultimately fell short. The French Char 2C, constructed between the World Wars, was one of the largest operational tanks ever made. With considerable firepower and very thick armor, it was meant to be a formidable adversary to the Mark series. However, its tremendous size made it difficult to transport and maneuver, making it an easy target for the nimble Mark tanks. The limited production and the sheer expense of these gargantuan machines led to their quick obsolescence. The Japanese Type 95 Hago, produced during World War II, was a light tank designed for infantry support and reconnaissance. While its lightweight and small size allowed for good mobility, the tank was severely undergunned and under-armored compared to the Mark series. It was unable to penetrate the Mark tanks' armor or withstand their firepower, and was thus largely ineffective in a direct confrontation. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union developed the T-10, the last heavy tank of the Iosif Stalin series. This tank had a 122mm gun and heavily sloped armor, making it a formidable adversary on paper. However, its conventional turret design and lack of advanced features compared to the Mark tanks, along with its high production cost and the advent of more modern tank designs, led to its eventual retirement. In an attempt to counter the Mark series, the United States developed the M103 heavy tank during the Cold War. It was designed to engage enemy tanks at long ranges, with a powerful 120mm gun and thick armor. However, it was plagued by mechanical unreliability and was considerably slower than the Mark tanks. The M103 was ultimately replaced by more modern and reliable tank designs. Even into the 21st century, nations made attempts to challenge the Mark series. China's Type 99, a modern main battle tank, boasted a 125mm smoothbore gun and composite armor. However, its conventional design and lack of advanced features, such as AI-assisted fire control and self-healing armor, made it unable to compete with the later Mark tanks. The Swedish S-tank, or Stridsvagn 103, was a unique tank destroyer design featuring a low-profile, turretless design for improved concealment. However, the fixed gun made it less flexible in combat, and its lack of advanced features made it unable to compete with the Mark tanks in direct combat. All these examples demonstrate the struggles other nations faced in developing tanks to compete with the Mark series. Despite these numerous attempts, the Mark series' constant technological evolution, combined with its innovative design, kept it a step ahead of its rivals on the global stage. In the annals of history, technology always evolves, inspired by the needs of the era and driven by the ambition of those who seek progress. But in this alternate timeline, the field of armored warfare saw a divergence from our world. The Mark series, born from the ashes of the Great War, emerged as an icon of unyielding strength and enduring ingenuity. Each variant in the series represented a stride forward, a testament to humanity's ceaseless pursuit of advancement. It didn't merely change the dynamics of warfare, it shaped history itself. However, the Mark series' indomitable reign was not only the story of technological superiority but also a tale of countless attempts by other nations to usurp its throne. These competing tanks, from the A7V Sturmpanzerwagen to the Type 99, though they fell short, each told their own tale of ambition, innovation, and resilience. They were the essential catalysts that drove the evolution of the Mark series, pushing it to the pinnacles of technological achievement. Now, in 2023, the Mark 17, the Leviathan, stands as a testament to the enduring legacy of the Mark series and the rhomboidal design. It's more than a symbol of British military power, it is the pinnacle of humanity's mastery over armored warfare, a marvel of engineering and technology that towers above all that came before. Even so, the future remains an open book. The Mark series, though currently unmatched, will continue to evolve, driven by the eternal cycle of progress. And the world, ever watchful, will continue its attempts to challenge this reign, fueling the furnace of innovation. In the grand saga of armored warfare, the Mark series has etched its name indelibly. As we gaze into the future, one thing is certain, the legacy of the Mark tanks will continue to resonate, an enduring testament to mankind's indomitable spirit and unyielding pursuit of progress. In the face of this relentless force, the story of the Mark series is far from over, indeed, it's just beginning.